This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. If you're watching this in America, you might be confused and thinking, what is he on about? Now, for the second time, brought out a SE model, and in the UK, we have quite a different price to what you're getting in the US. So in the US, you paid $850 for these. We paid £850, which, if you know the conversion rate, that's quite a difference. Now, the PRS DGT SE, in the US, you are paying $850 for that, right? Very reasonable price. In the UK, we are paying about $1,000. Now that's £300 more than what you're paying. It's not really that clear why. Normally in the UK, what we're typically seeing from like Fender and stuff like that is that if the American vintages were $1,900-ish, then in the UK they'd be about £1,900. We're used to seeing that, but we're not used to, and let me know if this seems weird to you, seeing prices that are above the dollar rate in the UK. That is a little bit bizarre. I'm not sure what's going on. I think the DGT SE looks like a really good quality guitar, but why in the UK are we paying £300 more? Not clear to me. In about 2000, 2001, PRS started to build a cheaper range of guitars, and it was inspired by Carlos Santana, who said, give me a guitar that doesn't cost thousands of pounds that my fans can buy. Now, I feel like with this latest PRS DGT SE, this is in the UK priced at like £1,000. Now, I feel like the name Student Edition no longer applies. Maybe they should call it Student Loan, or I don't know, Student Dentist SD. It just seems to me, and I don't know whether this is just me being naive about this, but £1,000 for a guitar built in Indonesia possibly seems expensive. Now, of course, Schecter also build guitars there, and they recently just brought out the Aaron Marshall, which is over £1,000. I think Yamaha build some stuff there, Strandberg build some stuff there. It just seems that if they're relatively simple-ish designs, I don't know. Also, it seems like the SE name, the idea of it was to have a more budget guitar, and I don't feel like necessarily £1,000 is particularly a budget guitar anymore. Now, there are loads of guitars made by PRS. Some of them are still made in South Korea, some of them are made in Indonesia, and there are some that are sort of around the £500 mark, which I think probably does fit the budget mark a bit better. And I'm not sure if this is something to do with the UK economy, because I think the PRS DGT in the US is priced around $850, which does seem quite reasonable, considering it's like all mahogany and all that stuff. And if you end up with a really good guitar, then you probably don't mind. The same sort of thing that I thought with the Silver Sky SE, which in the UK came in at £850, £900, which I thought for this kind of bolt-on design, it was, you know, £300 more expensive than a Mexican Player. Now they've been heavily discounted in the UK to £600 quite often, and I think that's about the right sort of price. So I don't know, is that what's going to happen with the DGT? I'm sure they're going to sell really well anyway, because people don't have necessarily £4,000 to spend on the core line. In the UK, the PRS DGT core costs £4,000, which to me is fairly eye-watering. The Indonesian version is going to cost about £1,000, which again, I feel like there's got to be some other options that you could consider in that kind of price range. The PRS S2, for example, which is built in America, the prices of those, I can remember being able to buy those for about £700 in offers fairly recently. I think I maybe even got one from PMT. I wouldn't say that was necessarily a better quality guitar than these Indonesian ones, to be fair. So maybe there's another point to this, which is, well, just because it's made in Indonesia doesn't mean it's not a really decent guitar. This one, for example, is pretty good, but I feel like, is it time to call them something different to SE? Because the student edition being £1,000 really only is going to suit a student lawyer, right? I thought it was maybe worth asking the question, like, what does student edition really mean anymore? Because I guess for a PRS, this is like an affordable guitar. So these were in the UK about £850, £900 when they first came out. And for me, that's not the sort of money that I was spending on guitars when I was a student, although maybe times have changed. I think in the US it was about the same in dollars, and that's more in line with the Mexican Player. Of course, there's a lot of other PRSs that don't have John Mayer or Dave Grissom on the headstock, which are more reasonably priced. I think the PRS Custom 24 is less than 600. Those to me seem maybe a little bit more budget friendly, but what are the options? Are these better guitars than we used to see out of this part of the world? I think to some extent we probably wouldn't have been seeing guitars built in Indonesia when I was a kid. I think in those days it would have probably been Korea and then a bit of China. So these are essentially new factories, and so the quality has ramped up, I think. I think the main reason that guitars have moved from Korea to Indonesia are because of Cort. However, I do still think that £1,000 for a guitar is, I think, still a lot of money, right? So the PRS DGT SE is a lot cheaper than the real DGT, but I still think that's within, you know,
how do we even segment guitar prices anymore? So there's super budget stuff, you know, like Squier Affinities, maybe the very cheap Yamaha Pacificas. There's a few things at that end of the market. Below that, you've also got the things that are made for specific shops, like the cheap, really cheap stuff, or maybe even some Harley Benton stuff. Then you've got your things like your Squier Classic Vibes, your slightly upper range Yamaha Pacificas, some of your Ibanez stuff, like the AZ ES is, you know, a step above very budget. Then you've got things like your Squier 40th anniversary stuff, you know, again, a little bit of a step up. Sire guitars, price-wise. Then you start to get to the realm of, you know, the Mexican Players and your things like your PRS Silver Skies. But once you get above this sort of £800 mark, what is that as a guitar? There's this kind of floaty realm where it's not super expensive, not quite budget, not really mid-price, because £1,000 for a guitar I still think is, especially a guitar built in Indonesia, is still bordering on expensive, right? It's very strange to me. So these guitars I think are really decent, but in terms of being a student guitar, student edition, is that a bit of a misnomer? Let me know your thoughts in the comments on that. What do you reckon? You could get an 80s Tokai for 600-ish in the UK, 500, and that would be a 40-year-old guitar that might be a cracker. Is it worth buying these newer kind of mid-price guitars? I wonder. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm not sure.